Good everyone, organized video today. It's a sub request by a guy named, hope I pronounced this correctly, AquinoRs or AquinoRs, something like that. It's one of the two, I'm fairly certain. And it's for the Spitfire Mk Vc. Now, when I was spading this aircraft, I actually had a pretty alright time with it. But that was luck mostly, and also I knew what I was doing when it came to the Spitfire with quad cannons. So the Spitfire Mark 5C, excuse me there, as you can tell, is a Mark 5 airframe, and at 4.7, there's already stuff like the Mark 9 Spitfire, which it has much better performance than the 5, but at the same time trades it for armament, but you do get a bit of extra cannon ammo at least. The 5 Spitfires are just weird, well, the Mark 5s is what I mean. Because you get the 5B Trop, you get the 5B, which is at 3.7, then you jump straight up to 4.3 with a VC Trop, and then you get this one. Now, the repair cost on this thing, I don't agree with. 11,500 to repair it is a bit stupid, but at the same time, I have nearly 26 million lines. I do not care. But it's just a bit silly. So, Aquino was looking for a bit of advice on this aircraft, and the best thing I'm going to say is actually to skip this thing. I know that sounds weird considering I just said I had a good time with it, but at the same time, it's not really it's a good aircraft, but it's just not really worth the time in my personal opinion. I was actually going to do a video on this aircraft beforehand, but obviously a patch dropped and then that killed off the Sterlings, the Spitfire, and something else if I remember rightly. So I couldn't exactly do that. But that doesn't mean this thing's bad, per se. It's just, you need the engine mods to get this thing going. So what do I mean by that? Well, this is the way I upgraded this aircraft. I went new 20mm to obviously get the belts online. You want to run ground targets because of the time to live bug, which it's a pain in the arse, so you just use ground targets because you get AP, which does actually surprisingly large amount of damage. You obviously want to go compressor next to obviously increase your engine power. Then go new 20mm cannons, engine, Mark II year 1942, engine injection, and then obviously Mark 1943, and then obviously clean up the last four. This Spitfire doesn't come with any bombs because it's not a Mark 9, it's a Mark 5. Now, compared to your opposition, it's actually going to be pretty hard to play this thing because obviously it's a 4.7 aircraft and it fights some of the most powerful 5.7 aircraft in the game. Meaning that you're going to have to play this thing a lot differently to how you normally would. It's not like an LF Mark 9 Spitfire. You can't just climb at 20 degrees and expect to be above everyone. Not that case, especially with the fact that you're going to be probably stock when you're playing this thing for the first time. Unless you GE'd your way through it, which I don't blame you. But the point is that this aircraft is really one of those aircraft that I would skip. Obviously, I'm a spader. I don't like to leave things behind. Like, I'm currently working on a Mark 16 Spitfire, which was requested by a guy named Rahul Samant, I think it was. Something along those. I know it's Rahul Samant or Rahul or whatever. But yeah, it's an aircraft that I would comfortably skip. And obviously, oh, straight in, lovely. It's an aircraft that I just don't see the point of because it's at a battle rating where the Mark V airframe is getting a bit long in the tooth, if you know what that saying means. And that's the thing, like the Mark V as a whole, just, to me, doesn't work at this BR. Don't get me wrong, it's got the agility and it's got a reasonable climb rate. But at the same time, the Mark 5C Spitfire in real life was pretty much beaten by the Fokker Wolf 190. And you gotta remember, you can potentially fight Dora the Explorer in this thing. If you don't know what I mean by Dora the Explorer, it is the D13, D9, and D12s. They're called Doras, but I call them Dora the Explorer after the kids' cartoon character, which I used to actually watch Dora the Explorer when I was a kid. I think it's still going as well. It's one of the few things I remember from being a kid that's still actually going to this day. So obviously, when it comes to me giving tips on this aircraft, This is a spaded Spitfire, so my points are going to be a bit invalid for the most part. But obviously when you're spaded, you can get away with 20 degrees. When you're not, I recommend about 15 to maybe even somewhere in the vicinity of about 13 to 14 degrees. Obviously Spitfires don't tend to overheat too badly, but it's only when you ride the wet for far too long. I mean, you can already see it's going into the amber. But obviously this is a spaded Spitfire, so just bear that in mind. The performance of this aircraft is completely different to an unspaded Spitfire Mark V. Obviously roll rate isn't too shabby, the rudder response is pretty okay. It's the guns that you tend to have trouble with. Now another thing to take into account is this is a non-tropical variant of the Spitfire. Tropical variants of the Spitfire, same with the 109, tend to have better cooling, but not by a whole lot, than the other models. So this means that in the long run, you may not have the, shall we say, the cooling down ability, or like the more like the cool down effect of normal tropical aircraft. I was going to see if I'm riding the balls off this thing because, well, I can. But when you're stuck, you won't be able to do this. The radiator will simply overheat on you. And eventually, this thing is going to start overheating. Obviously, I'm not too concerned about that. The whole point of this thing is to gain some altitude. We need to get this thing up as high as we can, because obviously, if you look at the aircraft stat card, this is about the altitude where this thing would fight, and it's preferred for this aircraft. But obviously, we're up against Germans, and they love to climb. As you can see there, DO 335 just underneath my wing, and there's an ME264. Bombers are not advised in Spitfires. Do not go after bombers in Spitfires. If you tailgate a flipping bomber, or even go near a bomber, and you get eviscerated in one hit, do not come crying to me, because, well, I've already said, do not go after bombers in Spitfires. Obviously, the team looks to be pretty mixed. Obviously, we've got a Typhoon rockets on, which I don't agree with. Wyverns over there. That's not too much of a deal. We do have, however, a Spruce Goose to deal with, and a DO 335. And obviously, there's the Focke-Wulf 190, who appears to have a really big beef with that B-17, because he shot him even after he was already dead. You can see the thermodynamics for this aircraft are actually pretty decent, especially when you get it spaded. So, on the enemy team right now, the three priority targets I would want to deal with is that G55, that Hitler Bolt, and also the Spruce Goose. But obviously the Spruce Goose is going low, so I don't need to worry about him. But here you can see the problem with allied teams. They're swarming. That was 3 aircraft. I mean, one of them had it on its tail, but still applies. To go for one Focke-Wulf 190 Anton. Chances are it's an A5. That's what you're going to experience a lot of. So if you, I just had to take my headphone off then, because I heard a motorcycle. If you heard the motorcycle, then, well, I think it's like a very well modified 125, personally. I love me. I don't know much about motorcycles, I'm more of a car guy. So, obviously we're up at nearly 20,000 feet. This isn't really where the Spitfire performs the best, as you can tell by the speed. And remember, this is a... You gotta remember, this is a Spitfire that's meant for about medium altitude, and it works pretty well at medium altitude. So, I'm just concerned to where that Hitler Bolt, and there's the G55. This is what I want to deal with. Now, in a dogfight, a G55 is actually one of the most dangerous aircraft for a Spitfire. It actually gives the Germans a pretty good chance of actually fighting back, but as you can tell, he's realised there's a Spitfire above him, and he doesn't want to tangle with that. You'll notice that a large proportion of German aircraft do not want to tangle with a Spitfire, because they know what these things can do in skilled hands. Now, as you already know from my 5B video, I'm not a huge fan of Spitfires. I like, Hello left a pretty funny comment which basically describes what he thinks is a flaw with my idea about the Spitfires and Hurricanes and stuff like that, but he understands it's my personal preference and everything, so... Right, here comes this 109, and this is what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and force this guy to self-bait. Obviously, he ain't going to turn with a spit. No way is he turning with a spit. And we've managed to get him to lose all of his energy. That's generally what you're going to notice. A lot of people tend to underestimate Spitfires a lot. And well, I forgot I had my gun split from earlier. I was flying the Chin 45, so give me a break. But as you can see, ground targets is not guaranteed kills. But even then, I could just flip it back around, force him to come into the vertical, where he's going to lose more energy than me. And if you notice now, I'm going to kick the rudder over. Just make sure he's got no cronies joining the party. But what this guy should have done is, he should have tried to break off. But again, as I said, just because I'm using ground targets, doesn't mean it's guaranteed. And I think we just sniped the engine with that shot. Also, apologies for the FPS drops. Again, that is on Gaijin's end. They've been doing that a lot recently. There you go. That took a while, but at the same time, that's one of the more important fights dealt with. But as you can see, this is what happens with USA teams. So don't blame the plane, blame the teams, because well, that pretty much always happens. So even after that intense dogfight, we still have altitude over these guys. Obviously there's a Hitler Bolt and there's a G55. At the two, I want the G55 dead first. However, the Hitler Bolt in skilled hands is just as dangerous, so... And there's a Parker Wolf. Okay, this is going to get a bit interesting, isn't it? And the the G55 appears to want to engage. So does the 190, which is annoying, but at the same time, we're going to have to try and work with it. Alright, the G55 appears to have made a mistake here, so we'll try and get him out the fight. That's him out the fight. As I said, this is a spaded Spitfire. Do take into account, results may vary. That's an Anton. Let's see if we can force a brief shot there. There we go. Right wing. Obviously, as you can tell, this team is pretty much dead, so this ain't going to end well. So this guy's most likely dead anyway, but I'm going to give him another burst. There we go. But here to come the Hitler Bolt and the... As I said, spaded Spitfire. Results may vary. Obviously, the Hitler Bolt's making the mistake here of trying to turn fire, and that's the mistake he just freaking made, and I don't think he'll forget about that one. Now, we don't have a lot of options here, because obviously the 109 has the altitude. And whilst we have a reasonable roll rate, it's certainly not the best, but at the same time, we don't have a lot of ammo left. You can make this thing work. I don't think that Hitler Bolt pilot was very happy about that, because if you notice, he immediately rage quit the second I killed him. Or set him on fire. That was some fucking shit shooting on my part. Right, I think the Spruce Goose is coming back into the action. So now that we're at lower altitude, you may have noticed already that the temperatures are starting to rise. That happens. The higher you go, the better it gets. So, whilst he's fanning around, I might as well unsplit my guns whilst I'm here. That's better. So now I can actually fire with my left mouse instead of my right, because I've had to fire with the right because I didn't realise. So if you look behind me, I believe that is a Spruce Goose. But as you can tell, the Spitfire's low altitude performance isn't actually that bad. it's actually not too bad. I mean, it's certainly better. There are certainly better aircraft at this altitude, but for this thing being an inline, it's certainly not too shabby, I've got to say that. That's a crit. But obviously we don't have a lot of ammo left, so we've got to take this into account. And this is one thing the 5C will teach you, is trigger discipline. But obviously we're going to have to brake shortly, because that tar coming right at our nose. We're lucky you might TK the frickin' 109, and that's what I'm hoping, so you never know. That's him dead, but we're out of ammo. And that Spruce Goose ain't giving up the fight. Our only hope now is to try and either ram the Spruce Goose, or... which, we could actually ram the Spruce Goose if we have to. Just gonna let the team know. I think I might have to ram this son of a bitch. Which I don't really want to do, because it is a bit of a dick move, but... there you go, he's angry. But I don't really have an option there. That's an ace in the day, but obviously we had to ram, so... and the last teammates are the Typhoon, who's used up his rockets. And that's it. Here's it's just him. Right, let's head back to the hangar. I think that's a pretty good demonstration of showing what the Spitfire can do. But at the same time, it did involve a ram, which I don't like doing that, but in the light of the moment, we had no ammunition left, he was not going to let us go, and besides, I class that as 6 kills. And besides, it did happen in real life, a Hurricane did actually ram a 17 to stop it from bombing London, so it did happen in real life, and it is a valid air tactic. It's just whenever people ram when their aircraft is completely combat viable. But obviously, he didn't know I was out of ammunition. I knew I was out of ammunition, so I didn't really have a choice. But that to me wasn't a good, well, that wasn't a bad game. I mean, at the same time, I was a bit trigger happy in some situations. I probably could have avoided the ram to actually, or like, killed him with the guns, but at the end of the day, you don't tend to have a lot of ammunition with these Spitfires, and there you go, there's a defeat. I bet the Typhoon crashed it on landing or something. But that's the thing, you've got to be considerate with your ammo count. And obviously, given the amount of targets we had to deal with, there's only so much you can do in a Spitfire with 480 rounds. Take that into consideration. And just remember, just because you have ground target ammunition, doesn't mean you're always going to get the first shot and the first kill. Like we showed on that first 109. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed this episode in the, well, I say sub requests and everything. Obviously, if you want to make any requests, my requests are now free. That includes combo requests and normal subscriber requests. So, if you want to see that, please do let me know in the comments below. I'll see you all on the next one.